I am really excited by the Christopher Nolan film. The Odyssey has not had much luck with filmmakers, I have to say. I'm hoping that finally someone will give us an Odyssey that we can really get into. I think that every new translation is always opening up different ways of seeing it. The Odyssey isn't just a story of tales of daring do, which is what I thought it was. It's a hugely complicated story about, one man's attempt to get home, about questions of what it is to be a man, and questions looking not at Odysseus, the hero himself, but looking at his son, Telemachus, of what it is to grow up. It is the most complicated postmodern epic you could ever imagine. I'm Mary Beard, and I've worked on the ancient Greeks and Romans for 50 years now. I've written books about Roman history, about Greek architecture, and I've recently started a new podcast called Instant Classics, where we're going to be discussing anything to do with the ancient world. We're reading the Odyssey, we're looking at toga parties, and wondering where Rome began.
Understanding the Odyssey.
I first touched base with the Odyssey when I was, I suppose, about 7 or 8, but it wasn't with the Odyssey as a whole. It was with the stories that we were told at school and that my mum told me that were drawn from the Odyssey. How Odysseus challenged the one-eyed cannibal giant, the Cyclops, how he managed to get past the alluring sirens, etc., etc. I learned stories of tales from the Odyssey. I didn't read the Odyssey in any detail until I was in my mid to late teens, both at high school and at university. And I think what was surprising to me was that the Odyssey isn't just a story of tales of daring do, which is what I thought it was. It's a hugely complicated story about, one man's attempt to get home, about questions of what it is to be a man, and questions looking not at Odysseus, the hero himself, but looking at his son, Telemachus, of what it is to grow up. What really gripped me, I think, then, about the Odyssey was its complexity. The fact that it starts right in the middle of things. We don't see Odysseus for a bit. He's supposed to be the hero. We zoom down on Ithaca and we find his family. Eventually, when we do hear these stories, they are told by Odysseus to somebody else. We don't see them, as it were, at first hand. It is the most complicated postmodern epic you could ever imagine. And I never realised that until I read it cover to cover. How ancient listeners or readers understood and received the Odyssey is a really puzzling and intriguing question. We think we know. I mean, almost nothing is really certain about the Odyssey, but we think we know that the poem, in its now 24 books, originated in a bardic culture. It started life as a series of partly interlocking, partly formulaic tales sung by bards, let's say, around a campfire or after dinner in the evening. It's slightly different each time it was performed, as people put different bits in, as the audience would say, oh, let's have the Cyclops tonight. We've got this very fluid kind of oral reception and oral production first, whatever date we think that is, any time from the 10th century BC onward. I think it is very, very hard for us to understand the sophistication of oral audiences. I suspect we rather minimise the sophistication. I think that if we were more of an oral rather than a written culture, we would see the ways that oral points and oral emphases can hit home in a way that we probably would miss. The likelihood is that the Odyssey reached some kind of written form after generations of bardic composition, perhaps in the 8th century BCE first. Whether or not it had anything to do with someone who was or was not called Homer, we haven't a clue. But it didn't just stop there. I think that it's clear that the Odyssey is being tidied up and altered right up to the 5th century BC. I think at that point, we still have an oral aspect to the Odyssey. I suspect there are still people listening to the Odyssey in the 2nd century CE, but there are also very learned readers and commentators who are doing with the Odyssey much that we do, which is reading it really carefully and hard. It does look, and I think this is the conclusion of ancient readers and modern readers, it does look as if there is, at some point, there is a kind of overarching author who is, or series of authors who are pulling it into shape. And I think they're reading it as sophisticatedly as we do. They're looking for signs of what kind of culture, what sort of historical culture lies behind this. The kind of questions that we ask about the Odyssey do go back a very long way. So I think there are huge differences in terms of our ability to concentrate orally, which I'm sure that the first listeners had. But I think we also have much more in common with readers of the Odyssey in 3rd century Alexandria. They were doing much what we're doing, reading it with great attention. I am really excited by the Christopher Nolan film. The Odyssey has not had much luck with filmmakers, I have to say. I'm hoping that finally someone will give us an Odyssey that we can really get into. I hope that it will encourage a lot of people actually to discover or rediscover the Odyssey if they haven't done so already. And it's one of the reasons that on our new podcast, Instant Classics, we've got a book club where we will be reading the Odyssey over about a year to really talk it through book by book. I think that one has to reckon that people will find different Odysseys, as they always have. It helps a huge amount if you see what the text is from which this movie is going to come. There's so much in that to talk about that I think it will help really inform a kind of a criticism or an appreciation of the Nolan film if people have already got into it. I'm very much looking forward to a great bestseller list moment for the Odyssey, actually, in the next year or so. As for translations, I think it's a bad idea to be too prescriptive. If somebody picks up from a second-hand bookshop or off the web a translation of the Odyssey that they get into, that's fine. I think the really important thing is that you have an English text. Most of them are pretty reliable. You have an English text which will take you along with it. In recent times, there have been 2 translations of the Odyssey, which I think if people were just saying which one should I read, I would suggest they went to. One is Emily Wilson's translation of the Odyssey of a few years ago, which is amazingly the first translation of the Odyssey by a woman into English. There's also an even more recent one by Daniel Mendelsohn, which came out earlier this year, which is also, I think, excellent. They have some kind of translatorish issues, I think, with each other, but they are very good, up to the minute, very readable translations. That said, translations are absolutely always interpretation. You cannot translate the Odyssey without interpreting the Odyssey and without, in some way, having a modern conversation with it. Why 19th century translations often do sound stilted is because they were talking to 19th century people about the Odyssey. They're not talking to us. I think there are all kinds of emphases that translators come in and help us see some of the difficulties in a new way. And what was very clear in the Wilson translation was that when she was talking about the slaves in the household of Penelope, Odysseus' wife, and his son Telemachus in Ithaca, she translated slaves as slaves. Now, you go back to most of the standard translations from the 1950s or before, and they always use, or almost always use, that euphemism serving girl, right? They actually obscure the slavery in this culture. Wilson said, look, she wanted to look at this head on. And, when she saw an enslaved person, she was going to call that person enslaved. And of course, it does change your view of the kind of society that we see in the Odyssey. It's perfectly legitimate. In some ways, you could say that both translations are technically legitimate. But what Wilson's does is say, look a bit more carefully at what the status of these people are. I think that every new translation is always adding something, opening up. Yeah, okay, maybe it's concealing things too, but it's opening up different ways of seeing it. It's also, in the case of the Odyssey, it's inevitably grappling with words that we don't quite know how to translate. Very early in the first couple of lines of the Odyssey, Odysseus is being talked about. The poet is calling to the muse to tell the story of this man. The man we don't yet know, but the man is Odysseus. And the Greek adjective that goes with man is polytropos, and it literally means much turning, turny-abouty. Tell me about a much turning man. For centuries, in fact, back to Latin translations of the Odyssey in the 3rd century BC, people have been wondering what the text meant. What does polytropos mean? Does it mean wily? Does it mean bashed around on his voyage? Is he kind of having a terrible, difficult, circuitous route home? Is he a bit not trustworthy? Is he clever? And I think that quite often it's possible, and the notes on a good translation will help you, when the translator explains, hey, look, I had trouble deciding what adjective to use here, and these were the choices I had, and these were the reasons that I made my mind up this way or that way. So I think there's something, I think translations are best when you kind of get messy with them and you interrogate them a bit and don't take them as gospel, but take them as interpretative experiments on the text.
Want to support the channel? Join the Big Think members community where you get access to videos early, ad-free.